The full court press. The premiers go to Washington. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Doing the meet and greet with tariffs already announced by the Trump administration on all Canadian exports of steel and aluminum, and with the potential for more tariffs down the road, Canada's premiers are pleading their case to anyone who will listen in Washington, D.C. All of Canada's premiers are there, including Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who delivered a speech to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Over the last few months, I've met and spoken with senators, congressmen and women, governors from every region of America and from both sides of the aisle. And I'll tell you what they say. They won't say it publicly. They say, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And no matter if it's Democrat or Republican, I have yet to hear one elected official down here and say, that's a great idea. Let's attack Canada economically. It's never been said. I've yet to meet one CEO, and I've talked to endless CEOs, say, let's go after Canada. Every single U.S. corporation, their headquarters, for the most part, not all, but a good chunk of them, probably 85%, they're located in Toronto or Ontario somewhere. And the supply chain is so integrated.
Later, during a question and answer session at the same event, Premier Ford tried to push the close ties between Canada and the United States, especially during times of crisis.
But we've had the threats of tariffs go, and, you know, and when that hurricane hit North Carolina and Florida, without asking, we sent endless amount of, we call them hydro linemen, electricity linemen. They loaded up their trucks, they headed down there. And then the California fires. And sure enough, the tariffs were peaking a little bit. We put a call out in Ontario to urban firefighters. We had more urban firefighters ready to suit up. We had to cap it at 300, ready to hop on the plane, put their lives in danger to protect our family members. We had water bombers already stationed. We flew them out to BC to fly down there. Unfortunately, the story goes, they said they didn't have the water for the water bombers. But my point here is, when a family member needs help, you put everything else aside.
But fuzzy feel-good stories like that don't seem to be having much of an effect on the man in the White House. The Trump administration confirmed to news outlets yesterday any new tariffs that could be coming would be stacked on top of any existing tariffs. So a 25% tariff on Canadian-made exports could become a 50% tariff. Last night, Fox News aired more remarks from Donald Trump. He ranted again at some length about making Canada the 51st state.
And I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada, you can't count them. Wayne Gretzky, I love Wayne Gretzky. I love so many people. I love their tradition. I love their ice hockey. But why are we paying $200 billion a year, essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it. The Canadian citizens would have a much lower tax rate. They'd have much better medical, and they'd have military protection like nobody can have. You know, you have Russian ships all over the place. You have Chinese ships all over the place. They're sailing all over Canada. They're sailing right next to Greenland. We're not going to let that happen to Greenland. They're sailing all over, and we're going to stop that. But if you're a Canadian and you pay much lower taxes, you have much better military protection, you know, Canada is in default in NATO.
And Trump also threatened tariffs of 50 to 100% on Canada's auto industry. He claimed Canada stole the auto industry from the United States.
In Mexico, they're building car plants all over the place to make cars, sell them into the United States. I say, no way, you're not going to do that. We're going to put big tariffs on those cars. I don't want those cars. We can make those cars right here. You know, if you look at Canada, Canada has a very big car industry. They stole it from us. They stole it because our people were asleep at the wheel. So what happens is Canada's going to have our cars. We're going to take the car industry. If we don't make a deal with Canada, we're going to put a big tariff on cars. Could be a 50 or 100% because we don't want their cars. We want to make the cars in Detroit.
As for dealing with the near-term threat of tariffs and a looming 25% tariff on aluminum and steel exports to the United States. Aluminum is a major industry in Quebec, Quebec is the top exporter of aluminum to the United States. In Washington, Quebec Premier François Legault said Trump's position makes no sense and sounded confident Quebec could find other markets for the product.
There's not much risk for the aluminum business in Quebec because there's no overcapacity. So if the United States decide to buy aluminum from Asia or from Europe, then we'll sell to Europe and Asia. So there's a balance. So it's not much risk. I think the risk is for Mr. Trump, because in the United States, they use every year 5 million tons of aluminum, and they only produce 700,000 or 800,000, which is 14% of their needs. We supply Quebec supply 60% of their needs. So they are in a bad position for sure. So that's why I say it doesn't make sense for him. Nobody believes that he can produce more aluminum. And I was with the big companies today. Nobody believes that he can make more aluminum in the United States.
Canada's Minister of Finance, Dominic LeBlanc, is also in Washington today. He is supposed to meet with Howard Lutnick, Trump's pick to run the U.S. Commerce Department. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. Coming up next, the leader of Alberta's New Democrats, Naheed Nenshi, on an unfolding scandal in Alberta involving Alberta Health Services. That's just ahead on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
The Alberta government, led by Premier Danielle Smith, is reeling from a series of damning reports in the Globe and Mail. Those reports that first appeared last week deal with questionable procurement practices at Alberta Health Services and deals for private surgical facilities. The Smith government dismissed the head of Alberta Health Services just 2 days before that executive was scheduled to meet with the province's Auditor General about the matter. She says she was fired because she launched an internal investigation and forensic audit into contracting and procurement practices. The entire board of AHS was also dismissed. Among the allegations, Danielle Smith's former chief of staff interfered in the procurement and contracting processes on behalf of private companies. So the Auditor General will investigate. The RCMP says it is reviewing the allegations. Province's health authority, meantime, says a third party will do a review, all while the Premier has denied any wrongdoing. For some reaction to all of this, Naheed Nenshi joins us, the leader of the Alberta NDP. Thanks for the time today.
Well, thanks, Rob. What a great summary of just an absolutely head-scratching scandal that is unfolding here in Alberta right now.
What do you think was going on here?
Well, this has always been a little confusing because the provincial government has been obsessed with remaking Alberta Health Services, but it's also kind of clear that they've been making it up as they go along. So we're now on our fifth CEO of Alberta Health Services since the UCP took power. They have replaced the entire board with handpicked people a couple of times. And it was always clear that, even though they put these people into positions, they're not doing what the government wants. And the other thing that's always been puzzling is the government is pushing hard for these private surgical clinics, even though the more they build these private surgical clinics, the longer the wait times get, and public operating rooms that are already built in public hospitals are sitting empty. And so we've always wondered, what is actually going on here? Do they just not know what they're doing? Or is there something more malicious behind it? So now we've got these allegations, and it must be said these have not been proven. These are allegations. But if they're true, then they're deeply troubling, because these allegations basically say that the experts, the bureaucrats, were being applied political pressure from political staff to award certain contracts to certain people, even when the bureaucrats said, hey, you're paying for things you're not getting, and these contracts are more expensive than if we had open competition.
Right. And then
this
you
is really
you have to draw your own conclusions as to why political staff would be applying that pressure to
Yeah, I mean
to bureaucrats. Why would
is damning.
Right. Why would they want taxpayers to pay more for healthcare services than the market rate, for example? Right.
Yeah, and again, it's dangerous to talk too much about allegations, but certainly the documentation makes the conclusion that you would expect it makes. But we also know that the folks at the center of this scandal were behind the famous $80 to $100 million wasted on Tylenol from Turkey from Dr. Oz's mom. And they're also the folks who are behind the Skybox scandal, hosting, wining and dining various cabinet ministers during Oilers playoff games. So the whole thing is leading Albertans to say, who is this government actually working for? And the fact that the Premier has not answered questions on this, that the Health Minister has not answered questions on this, that it took them 4 days to write a statement saying, we're going to have an Auditor General report, which the Auditor General already said he was investigating. The Premier simply saying, I'm telling him to hurry it up, which he has no right to do. And also, we're going to have an internal investigation that reports directly to me. Here's the thing. People implicated in these documents are the head of Alberta Health Services, the CEO, who reports to the board. Oh, wait, there is no board. He also is the official administrator replacing the board. So he reports to himself. Well, they report to the Deputy Minister of Health. Oh, it's the same guy. So we have an investigation run by a guy named in the documents who reports to himself, who reports to himself, who reports to the Health Minister named in the documents, who reports to the Premier. And the Premier herself has said she wants that investigation directed directly to her. Well, that's not how this works. And, how dumb does she think Albertans are?
Okay.
We need
so how do you think it should work,
party
then, Mr.
investigation as well as an RCMP investigation.
Okay. So you have demanded actually 4 avenues of investigation. Can you outline those for us,
So many
please?
investigations. Let's let the independent Auditor General do his work. The RCMP should be called in to look at any allegations of criminal wrongdoing. We need a full public inquiry, not just a third-party investigation, but an inquiry that happens in the public. There's things for the Ethics Commissioner to look into here, and quite frankly, the folks implicated cannot be there while these investigations are going on. And at the very least, they need to temporarily step aside up to and including the Premier.
Okay. I would like to get your take on another important issue, and that's the issue of tariffs.
Yeah,
Mr. Nenshi. In a report, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce says the city of Calgary is the second most vulnerable Canadian city to U.S. tariffs because Calgary exports more goods to the United States as a share of its local economy. I would note Lethbridge is on the list, Red Deer is on the list, Edmonton also on the list. If you were the Premier of Alberta, what would you be doing that Premier Smith is not doing to blunt the impact of any tariffs from the Trump administration, sir?
Yes, I do know the Calgary economy pretty well, having been the mayor of Calgary for a long time, and this is not a surprise. We are very, very, very exposed. And the challenge that we have is that the Premier has been freelancing in all of this. Instead of working with the other premiers and the federal government, she's been sort of off on her own on what she thinks is a charm offensive. And her entire strategy really was, if she can only get a ticket to Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so she promised Kevin O'Leary the world so he could get her to Mar-a-Lago. And if she could only get to Mar-a-Lago and get in front of President Trump, and the 30 seconds she had with him, she would convince him that his entire economic policy is wrong. Now, when I say it like that, it's pretty clear it was never going to work. And it didn't work. And her problem is that she is just giving up the frame in the negotiation to the president. She keeps saying, well, he's right about this, he's right about this. She was quoted in the press saying, our goal needs to be to give Trump a win. To give who a what now? That's not how you enter a negotiation. I'm going to gift her a copy of Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, to try and understand that what she's doing isn't going to work. On the other hand, what we need to do is roll up our sleeves and work with industry. So I was lucky to be at the National Summit last week on Canada-U.S. relations in Toronto. And really, very briefly, we need to focus in three areas. Number one is strengthening the Canadian economy and making it less reliant on U.S. exports. That includes things like pipelines for export markets like the one that Rachel Notley got built to the West Coast, the Trans Mountain expansion. Number two, making our trade with the United States more pivotal to the United States economy and less subject to political whim. And number three, massively increasing our export markets in the rest of the world. We've got to start working on these things. It's not enough to just go on Fox News and try to charm Trump.
Okay. Mr. Nenshi, always nice to hear from you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, everyone.
That's Naheed Nenshi. He's the leader of the Alberta NDP. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Here with David Smith on a Wednesday. If you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, Now You Know with Rob Snow, we have a great new mobile app that can help you hear our show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. Seekr. Seekr. It has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. And you can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, Seekr. And Now You Know with Rob Snow is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And we're kind of in a holding pattern here, Dave. It's the calm before the big weather bomb.
Yeah.
Hit this part of the country. You sound so defeated already, and it hasn't even started snowing.
I know. It's actually like just beautiful blue sky behind me here in the studio.
It's gorgeous out right now.
I know what's coming. And
yeah, so I mean, it's not, officially extreme winter weather until it happens in Toronto, right? So even Toronto is going to get hit, with maybe as much as 40 centimeters of snow. And some of the weather people in Toronto are saying could take days for them to dig out. And of course, we're in the national capital region, so about, 4.5 hours east of there. And we're probably going to get between tonight, it's supposed to start around 8 or 9 o'clock tonight, and then snow all night, and then all day tomorrow afternoon. We'll probably get 40, I think, by the time it's all done, which is a lot of snow because we have a lot of snow down already. And then they're saying maybe between Saturday and Sunday night, maybe another 30 for a grand total of 70 between now and Sunday. So I've been kind of getting ready for that all week. I even had to climb up on my carport and start shoveling it off. These are the kinds of storms where you don't want to mess around, Dave. You don't want to mess around.
No, you don't want any collapses. That would be
it's very heavy, very
tough.
heavy. So yeah. So, but we'll get through it. And we'll get through our Newsday panel. That's coming up right after the news at the bottom of the hour. One of the things we're going to talk about today is what is going on with these polls. There was a poll yesterday from Leger said if Mark Carney does end up winning the Liberal leadership, they did a poll. What does that race look like between the Liberals and the Conservatives if it's Liberal leader Mark Carney? It's a tie, 37-37. So it looks like it could be a whole new political horse race. We'll talk about it coming up here on Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
And the gang's all here for a Wednesday news panel, including Kate Harrison, Vice Chair at Summa Strategist. How are you today?
Doing okay. A little chilly. How are you?
Well, that'll be the least of your worries soon enough, Kate,
So I hear.
given the weather that's on the way. But Neil Brodie is along for the ride as well, longtime Conservative strategist. How are you, Neil Brodie?
I'm great, and the gas tank on the snowblower is topped up.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good advice there, Neil. Always prepared. Okay,
Yep.
Let's talk about these polls. A whole new race is one of the headlines. A whole new race. Neil, what do you think about the latest polling showing a much tighter federal horse race right now? Liberals up, Conservatives down, NDP down.
Well, a week ago we were talking about polls, and the Liberals couldn't go any lower than that. So it's nice that they've rebounded a bit for their own sake. Of the polls that I've seen, there's the standard national polls that show the Liberals, led by nobody right now, are rebounding a bit. And then the latest one you talked about at the end of your last half hour is the Leger one that's showing Mr. Carney pulling closer to Mr. Poilievre when he's installed as the leader, if that happens. Listen, we've talked about polls on this show before. Individual polls can say anything. This is the first poll since they've named liberal leadership candidates. What we need to watch for is if this trend continues over the next month. That's why it's an important time for Mr. Poilievre to start defining Mr. Carney, since Mr. Carney doesn't appear to be putting forward many policy proposals during his leadership race. I think the only thing we seem to know about Mr. Carney is that as a kid he was a hockey goalie, and that nowadays he can afford $2,000 snow boots.
Okay. I thought that might come up in the conversation today, but over to you, Kate. What do you think about the latest polling that's been released?
Yeah, I think there's a few things happening. Neil is totally correct that this is about the trend, not one individual poll. And, there wasn't necessarily a Trudeau leaving bump that the Liberals got. And I think what's happening in Ottawa is pretty similar to what we're seeing play out in Ontario, which is, when there is this threat with tariffs that's being posed by the U.S., sometimes that can benefit incumbents. This is still a very big delta, and, I don't want to give anything David Coletto might say away, but there will be a new Abacus poll in the coming days, Rob, that you can have something else to chew on. But this is a big delta that exists, and the desire for change remains high. So I think there's a bit of a Trump factor here, and to another point Neil made, people are projecting onto Mark Carney really whatever they want because he has been very absent in speaking to what he would actually do. He might become the Prime Minister of Canada with, a couple of media interviews at most, or from what I can tell, only one U.S. interview so far. So when people start getting a look at Carney, I think their opinions and views might change. And when he is tested in terms of what he would actually propose to do that is all that different than Justin Trudeau, I think Canadians might realize that there is not much of a difference. The contrast isn't there. And the focus will be, again, on who's actually going to help people with their affordability and cost of living issues.
Okay. So, Neil, some people have said, well, it's not dissimilar to what happened when John Turner took over the leadership of the Liberals after Pierre Trudeau, or when Kim Campbell took over the Progressive Conservatives from Brian Mulroney. They enjoyed a bit of a bump. Do you think there could be something to that happening here?
100%.
Yes. Okay.
3 or 4 months ago, Kamala Harris was going to be the next president of the United States, and we saw how that turned out as well, if you're looking for something in more recent memory. So, yeah, listen, as Kate said, and I've told you before, Rob, don't turn your back on Kate. She's a smart cookie. As she said, we don't have any idea what Mr. Carney stands for. He's this, perfect being right now, and so we'll wait to see what Mr. Carney ever puts out in the policy shop window, or how Mr. Poilievre begins to define carbon tax Carney.
Okay. Kate, what are you expecting to hear from the Conservatives in light of recent events, including the polling and kind of the change in the narrative away from maybe, say, the Trudeau record to the Trump threat? How do you expect the Conservatives to respond?
Well, there's two parts to this. I think one is making sure it's very clear that people will not get different decisions and see actions on critical things they care about, like the carbon tax and cost of living issues, if they elect Mark Carney. So to Neil's point, really making sure that when people see Mark Carney, when he actually decides to step in front of the camera, when there's campaign level scrutiny and attention on him, they see Justin Trudeau 2.0. So to me, that is mission 1, 2, and 3 for the Conservative team, is to make sure that link is very clear. And frankly, they have a lot of material to work with, given how involved he has been with the Liberal machine for the last decade. The second part, I think, Rob, is actually leaning in to the messages that Conservatives have already been talking about. I don't buy this language around a pivot. I think that it's not what they should do. I don't think it's what they will do. I think, if anything, they should be leaning into the fact that, The carbon tax is a disaster for Canadians, and it's bad for investment. It's bad for the economy. Poilievre has been talking about stopping the crime. Well, what do you think that the issue with fentanyl and the border is about, right? So Conservatives have been talking about the issues that now all of a sudden everybody cares about for the better part of 18 months. To me, that is a sign and a signal that you should lean into that messaging and talk about how to make Canada a more resilient place to be, lean into that messaging, not run away from it when people are now turning attention to some of these things.
Okay, I'd like your thoughts on that, Neil, but it'll have to wait until we come back. It's our Newsday panel. I'm Rob Snow, and this is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with our Newsday panelist, Kate Harrison, Vice Chair at Summa Strategies, and longtime Conservative strategist, Neil Brodie. So, I mean, for the better part of 2 years, Pierre Poilievre has been talking about axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. But now you have this threat of Trump and tariffs and 51st state. You see this tighter federal horse race in some of the polls. So what do you expect to hear from the Conservatives from here on in, Neil Brodie?
Well, I expect the Conservative Research Bureau to have spent the last 2 or so years researching and asking that exact question. You gave me a commercial break to think up a new set of messagings for Mr. Carney, and it's pretty easy. Mr. Carney is another downtown Liberal elite who has no idea what Canadians are experiencing. He left Canada to go work in the UK. He charged the British taxpayer $200,000 for relocation costs. His salary as the Bank of England governor was about $1 million a year. In the UK, he reduced interest rates to 0.25% and then encouraged the UK government to borrow massively at those rates. I mean, that sounds like the Trudeau government, doesn't it? He's promised to keep the carbon tax. He's floating this idea about a carbon border tariff, so that anything imported from a country that doesn't have a carbon tax into Canada would get a carbon tax applied to it, so our costs are going up again. There's plenty of things for...
That's what you came up with during a commercial break. Imagine what a 20-something on the Conservative Party's payroll will be able to come up with having a year or 100% so to do it, right? Yeah.
Well, I expect ChatGPT would come up with something better than that. But but you asked me. I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. What are you expecting from this rally on Saturday? Anybody going to the big rally on Saturday? Canada First rally?
Gonna try. I have something already on the schedule, some self-care, but boy, I love politics, Rob, so that might have to take a back seat. But yeah, I think, listen, what is the point of Saturday? I think it's commercials. I think it's ads. I think it's the opportunity to get a couple thousand people in the room if they can pull that many people and have flags. And the last time this was done, Rob, would have been the convention when Poilievre was after Poilievre had been elected. So it's about 18 months ago now, and so they need some fresh content for what is likely to be a campaign in the near term.
Right. What about you, Neil?
I have signed up. I have not seen Mr. Poilievre talk since the, as Kate referenced, the leadership contest 2 years ago or whatever it was. I'm interested to see what his messaging how his messaging has changed with the advent of Trump and be around conservatives in a town that's not usually friendly to conservatives.
Right. Okay. One of the things I've been wondering, I mean, this idea that a Liberal Party could be at 37% support with Mark Carney as the leader. I mean, it won a big majority government with just a little bit more than that in 2015, with about 39% support. The Liberals managed to win a majority government. They won the last two elections, minority governments, but won them nonetheless with barely 33% support, and in the last two elections actually lost the popular vote. The Conservatives have more of the popular vote. One of the things I've been wondering is, do you think the Liberals could win another election with 32 or 33% of the vote? What do you think, Kate?
I mean, things would really have to bottom out in terms of the appetite for change. And I think
Okay.
that is really the important number to focus on from my perspective is that appetite for change and also that dedicated, committed voter intention. Just because the Liberals may have picked up some more accessible vote, that doesn't speak to how motivated they are to turn out. And I think, it says something to me when we still have high-profile, committed Liberal cabinet ministers announcing on a semi-daily basis that they're not going to seek re-election. Just yesterday, Arif Virani, the Justice Minister, Mary Ng, longtime Trudeau ally and an international trade minister, both said they're not running again. That says to me that maybe they're not feeling the love that some of these pollsters seem to be feeling around the Liberals right now. If they were, why wouldn't they want to stick around and see what happens? So, I think the really important thing here is the desire for change. Where does that sit when we have an election? And that committed voter intention. Who's actually going to show up to the polls no matter what and vote? I do think that the Conservatives have an edge there.
What do you think, Neil?
Once elections are called, anything can happen. But for the Liberals to win, if we presume that Mr. Carney is going to be the leader going to the next election, that means Mr. Carney has to appeal somehow to, young people who are squeezed out of the housing market. He has to appeal to parents who are having to make tough decisions about buying food, paying rent, providing for their children. He's going to have to show Canadians that he will be tough on crime and repeal hug-a-thug legislation that forces judges to give hardened criminals bail hours after they are arrested. If Mr. Carney can credibly do that, maybe they have a chance, but
you still think it's a long shot?
Today, I can't see it. Yeah,
can't see it. Okay,
and
when we come back,
will involve.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kate. Yeah.
I'm just going to say it's going to involve trying to undo years of policies that Carney himself has supported. Right, like people right now are looking for conservative solutions. Mark Carney is not going to offer conservative solutions on crime. He's not going to offer conservative solutions on the economy. And frankly, the actual Conservatives cannot allow people to go into the election feeling that they will get conservative solutions with another Liberal government. That would be a bad situation for the Poilievre Tories. But to do what Mark Carney needs to do to course correct, to make Canada resilient, he'd be having to eat a lot of his own words over the last 9-10 years, and I just don't see him being able to do that.
I think the NDP is probably filled with regret right now. That's my own sense of things. They might be thinking, or I maybe even should be thinking, why did we defeat this Liberal government in September? Because a lot of the gains that Liberals are making in these polls seem to be coming at the expense of the New Democrats more than the Conservatives. What do you think is happening with the NDP right now, Neil?
I'm not sure the NDP knows what's happening with the NDP right now. In all seriousness, there's a Liberal leadership race going on right now federally. There's a general election in Ontario right now. There's a disruptive president in the United States right now. There's no space in Canada for an unserious federal leader like Jagmeet Singh right now. Earlier this week or late last week, Mr. Singh announced he was putting President Trump on notice. I don't even know what that means. Mr. Singh has worked extremely hard over the last 5 or 6 years to make himself completely irrelevant to Canadians. And he appears content to continue that work. So, you ask me what I think, that's what I think.
Okay. Kate, what do you think?
I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of diversity of perspective from me. from what Neil just said, I think we're, 12 days away from Jagmeet Singh's pension vesting. I think that's been his interest. His interest is not in being a party that is set or fit to govern. And I think the most likely scenario, Rob, that's going to play out in the next few weeks, Jagmeet Singh's not even going to get his opportunity to bring the government down. I think Mark Carney would be wise to try and seize upon very little scrutiny, very few questions that have come his way in terms of his record and what he stands for, and probably try to draw some contrast from the previous Trudeau days and saying, the days with of socialist deals and deals with the NDP are over, and I'm a different kind of Liberal politician. So Jagmeet Singh actually may end up being a bigger loser than the Liberals come the next election, because he rode the coattails for so long. He created no contrast. He finally found the spine to do that, and then voted with them 8 times.
And it didn't matter.
Voted 8 times to keep him. It didn't matter. And now the shot that he was going to take, he won't even get to play that game. Is what I think is likely.
Well, thank you for jumping ahead because we only have about 45 seconds left. So, Kate, obviously, Mark Carney is going to call the election shortly after he wins the Liberal leadership race. Is that what you think is going to happen, Neil? Very quickly.
Yes, 100%. There's no sense waiting around for Mr. Poilievre to continue to define who Mr. Carney is. Best to go out while Canadians don't really know about who he is. And then Canadians will have to decide who is best to turn around the track that Canada is on right now and make Canada a serious country again.
Okay, well done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, both.
Have a fantastic day, everyone.
Hope you get dug out okay over the next few days with the big snowstorm headed our way. I'm Rob Snow. That's our Newsday panel with Kate Harrison, Vice Chair at Summa Strategies, and Neil Brodie, longtime Conservative strategist, once worked in the Prime Minister's office of Stephen Harper. Talkback is coming up, midweek edition. Hope to hear from you right after the news. Lots of calls and lots of opinions. We've got a good topic today. Hope you'll join the discussion. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is, and welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic, Canadian pride. Canadian pride has been all over the news in recent weeks, that there is a renewed sense of pride in Canada among Canadians because of the threats from U.S. President Donald Trump, the threat of tariffs and all of his talk about making Canada the 51st state. For example, there have been many news reports about Canadians looking at labels when they go shopping, trying to buy Canadian-made products, or at the very least avoiding products that are made in the USA. Maybe you're one of them. There have been many news reports about Canadians canceling vacations to the United States and instead choosing to vacation in Canada. They don't want to spend their tourist dollars in the United States, given what they're hearing from the Trump administration. Some Canadian politicians are encouraging us to fly the Canadian flag on our properties. In fact, Saturday is Flag Day. And it also happens to be the 60th anniversary of the first time the red and white maple leaf flag was raised on Parliament Hill. That was back on the 15th of February of 1965. 5 former prime ministers issued a statement calling on Canadians to, quote, fly our flag with pride and show the flag as never before. A statement that was signed by Joe Clark and Kim Campbell, Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and Stephen Harper. As I mentioned with our previous guest, the Conservative Party is having a big rally on Saturday, right downtown Ottawa, not far from Parliament Hill. It's called the Canada First Rally. And the Conservative Party is encouraging people to show up dressed in red and white. And maybe that has more to do with the current political horse race than anything else. But they want to encourage Canadian pride, Canada first. I have, and this is true, I have received emails. I have heard talk. I have seen things on social media. Canadians thinking about acquiring firearms in case there's some kind of military invasion launched by the Americans. Canadians thinking about buying guns, defending their property, defending their country against American invaders. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper had a private event in Ottawa yesterday, a book launch. He has a new book coming out about Canadian flags. And he said if he was Prime Minister, there's an account of this in one of the papers today, if he was still Prime Minister, quote, I would be prepared to impoverish the country and not be annexed. If that was the option we're facing, quote, I would accept any level of damage to preserve the independence of the country. I guess he is saying, even if we all become poorer, we must accept that. We must accept damage to our economy, damage to our own personal well-being. We must tolerate that. If it means it needs to be done in the name of the preservation of Canada as a sovereign country. And then Mr. Harper suggests we could reorient our economy to recover our prosperity. But all of this has been in the news recently. Well, except the part about firearms. I think there are probably news stories to come about that. That's more anecdotal on my part. Well, what we want to know today, and we have a lot of questions about this today, is do you feel a renewed sense of pride in Canada because of these threats from the American administration? Are you doing any of this, for example? Are you avoiding buying American products, looking for alternatives, either made in Canada or made in some other country that's not the United States? Are you doing that? Are you avoiding travel to the United States? Maybe you had plans to go to Florida or go to the Carolinas or go to Arizona, someplace a lot warmer than here. And maybe you're not going to do that now. Going to go somewhere else. Maybe stay in Canada, vacation in Canada, spend your tourist dollars here. Are you doing that? Have you had those discussions with friends and family? You going to fly the Canadian flag? Get your hands on a Canadian flag? Or do you do that already? What do you make of this idea? Canadians arming themselves, buying firearms, fearing an American invasion. What do you make of that? Heard anything about that? I've seen it on social media. Have you given it some thought? I'm just curious on this idea of Prime Minister Harper's. Are you willing to sacrifice your own well-being? Be worse off if it means Canada remains the true north, strong and free. I guess to sum it up, just how far are you willing to go? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice to show your pride in the country in the face of these threats from Donald Trump in the United States? That's what we want to talk about today. All right, let's try a phone call. Rick in Dartmouth. Hello, Rick.
Hi. Look.
Hi, Rick.
How you doing? I don't like calling so much, but geez, you got so many damn interesting topics.
That's what they pay me for.
Canadian pride. This is the question that comes into my mind. I want to buy American milk. Okay, the Americans are not allowed to sell us any milk. We didn't put tariffs on them. We, maybe a 10,000% tariff because they can't sell any milk in Canada. And I can't have pride over a country that eliminates the product that I want to buy and blames the United States for putting a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum.
Okay.
So I just can't see how...
You got something against Canadian milk?
Well, no, of course I drink Canadian milk. I'm just using this as an example.
I know.
The Canadian milk market is protected. Right. No amount of tariffs are on it because you can't enter it. It's a supply management. Sylvain Charlebois explained that quite well. So I can't, I can't have pride in the hypocrisy of that. Being all worked up over Trump's tariffs, which technically, if there were no counter tariffs, I think it'd be a long time before I saw any difference in any prices of anything here other than food. And we are much too dependent.
So this idea that there's a renewed sense of pride in the country, or people are taking measures that they never took before, whether it's avoiding buying America or avoiding travel to the United States or flying the flag or all of this stuff. You're not really into that right now.
That's media driven.
Media driven.
In my view, that I listen to multiple media other than your show. Your show stands out as being balanced. The rest that I listen to, which would include all of the major Canadian stations and certainly some online things as well, are not in any way fair about this. They think that, and I think honestly that this is being driven by a desire to have the Liberals reelected. That's a stretch.
Okay, well,
but,
all right.
It seems that way. And as soon as Mark Carney is elected by the Liberal Party to be Prime Minister of Canada, then Pierre Poilievre will take the gloves off. Okay?
All right.
Right now,
Okay.
fighting
I don't want to
against the
really
guy.
get into that. I don't really want to get into that. I want to focus on this idea, Canadian pride. There's a renewed Canadian pride, and that people are actively avoiding buying American products or canceling travel plans to the United States or going out and buying Canadian flags or maybe even willing to take up arms to defend Canada. Let's go to the phone lines. Mike is in Calgary. Hello, Mike. You're on the air, Mike.
Hey.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Rob. How you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. Yeah, we're overcoming some technical problems, but I think we're doing okay.
Okay. Hey, sorry. Listen, yeah, of course I go all the way for the country, man. Pride is everything. I just don't think this is a hill worth dying on. You guys have blown this whole Trump tariff thing so far out of proportion. It's not even funny. You've got the entire country scared, and there's nothing to be scared of. It's just a big nothing sandwich.
Big nothing sandwich, huh? Well, he keeps talking about making us the 51st states and everything.
Well, yeah, sure, he's joking because he knows he's got the hook in. He hates dealing with leftist leaders, and he's never liked Trump since day one. So, he's just playing the game. But when it comes down to it, he comes in, he's going to be very boisterous, he's going to make everybody scared, and then all of a sudden back off and be everybody's friend. And that's right out of the Trump playbook.
Okay, so this stuff that's been in the news, Canadians avoiding American brands, canceling their travel plans to the United States, going out buying flags. I mean, I've seen it on social media. I'm thinking about buying a gun in case there's an invasion. What do you think of all that?
Well, I think it's the same thing as us wearing little tiny paper masks and walking down one-way aisles in the grocery store. We did that for 2 years, and look how that turned out. Ridiculous.
Okay, so you think it's all stuff and nonsense?
I do, and you know what? It's going to blow over and be nothing, and
blow over and be nothing.
You know what? You guys are all just going to get on to the next bone and not let go of that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mike thinks it's all overblown and stuff and nonsense and nothing to worry about. Andy's in Calgary. Hello, Andy.
Hey, Rob, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Andy. Thanks for calling.
What an absolute joke. Get a gun? They've disarmed the entire country for the last 10 years.
Right.
We're talking about a government who's telling you to be patriotic now, but a couple of years ago, it was actually a far-right nationalist symbol during, do you remember when Terry Fox was dressed in a Canadian flag and CBC went nuts, but not too long ago he was dressed in a Palestinian flag and nobody seemed to care.
A lot of the people are saying, I see this, a lot, people on social media, some of them are expressing, I finally feel pride in flying the flag again because after the Freedom Convoy, the Freedom Convoy protesters co-opted the Canadian flag. I've seen that.
Co-opted,
sure.
And that language to even call them like some type of Freedom Convoy, it was standing up for Canadian rights in our charter. By the way, we've had pretty much unregulated immigration over the last 10 years, and the universities use it as an absolute money grab. It's an absolute joke that we're being asked to be patriotic now when people were called Nazis and racist for even expressing a Canadian sentiment for ourselves. So
but don't you think maybe the landscape has changed and that Canada's under threat right now from the Trump administration?
Well, so why isn't anybody talking to the guy and making a deal with the author of the book on deals? They just want to fight, and you've got Jagmeet getting propped up, telling people how we're going to go pound for pound with Tesla in an economy that's 10 times our size. Why isn't anybody discussing deal options or how to come to a? You know what I mean? Like it's nuts.
Well, I mean, all the premiers are down there. They've been down there for 2 days. I would imagine there are.
Finally,
they're trying to make that case, right?
And they take a note from Danielle, and maybe that's a good idea. We should talk to them.
Okay. But this, it's all over the news, Andy. I'm sure you've seen the news reports. People checking labels at the grocery store. Usually would go golfing in Florida or something. I'm not going golfing in Florida this time, and I just bought a flag, and stuff like that.
I think this this is very left-wing, anti-Elon Musk. They're literally in Congress right now talking about Doge, and that is what our country needs. We need an investigation into where our tax dollars going. Let's really audit the government, because they're concerned over a $600 transaction down in the States, but not trillions of dollars on their federal budget. Doesn't make any sense. And they're targeting themselves. Anybody coming out against it is putting a label on their back that they need to be investigated.
Okay. All right. So this idea, there's a renewed sense of pride in the country. I mean, if there is, do you welcome it? Don't you welcome it? People being
state, let's go. No, Canada's not the country it used to be. 51st state, let's go.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Yeah, I disagree with you there, Andy, but thank you though for calling and sharing your opinion. It's all well and good. We did talk about this topic a few weeks ago here on Talkback, and we were asking at that time, would you boycott America? Would you stop buying American products and services? And we asked, would you look for Canadian options instead? Would you look for alternatives to American-made products? Would you avoid traveling to the United States? Some of you said yes. A lot of you said no as well, because you didn't think it would make any difference. I heard that time and again when we did our Boycott America show. A lot of you didn't think it would make any difference. The United States, to Andy's point, is, it's too big, it's too powerful. We don't have that kind of economic clout. A lot of you told me, Rob, I don't even think the Americans would notice if we did some kind of, boycott of America. That was a very common opinion expressed a few weeks ago. And we're just wondering, in light of all the recent events and everything you've heard from Donald Trump and, the senior members of his administration, we were just wondering if there's been any kind of movement on that and whether your opinions have changed at all. Canadian pride, renewed Canadian pride, our topic for the day on the Talkback. Let's go to Steve is in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Steve. You're on the air. What's your opinion here, Steve?
Well, I took Canadian pride to the next level during the Hollywood's writers' strike, if you remember that. And it shut down production in Canada. I said, how is that even possible? There is a 5% surcharge on everyone's cable bill, which brings in $100 million a month for our television and movie industry. The problem is we don't make any movies about Canada. I actually saw one called Brooklyn, and it was funded by the Telefilm Fund. So I said, okay, if you're not making movies for America, and I can punch up movies for Washington, Kennedy, Lincoln, etc., there aren't any about Canada. There's very few films about Canadian history. So I said, why don't you go to the university, get a couple history profs, get a couple screenwriters, develop a script, and then start shooting a movie. And they said, no. And I said, no. They said nobody would watch it. I said, of course they will. All you need is a hot young guy who takes his shirt off at the 12-minute mark, create a romantic story background, and there, people are going to watch it because that's how they've always done it in American movies. The bottom line is, if I ask a Canadian who's on the $100 bill, what is our longest river? Who is our second prime minister? They're going to be 0 for 3. In fact, everyone hearing my voice right now is 0 for 3. They don't know who it is. We really don't spend a lot on our own history, and I blame the fact that 5% of my cable bill does nothing to change that. Anyways, my thoughts. If you want a better Canada, let's give reasons. We can give them reasons to be proud of our country, but most people will say 1972, Paul Henderson, give me another one. And then they just kind of draw a blank. Anyways, my thoughts.
All right, Steve. Thank you for sharing them. Great to hear from you. Let's go to Dan is in Calgary. Hello, Dan. You're on the air, Dan.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome, Dan. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, so just to answer those 3 questions, I'm pretty sure it's Sir John A. Macdonald, Mackenzie River, and Wilfrid Laurier, but we'll just keep that offside.
Okay.
Yeah. So the questions you've asked, I've thought about all of those recently, and I'm glad they came out because I'm sort of glad that this happened with the U.S. and Trump. Unfortunately, bad timing, but I've always been a very, very proud Canadian, and to answer some of your questions about Canadian pride. So I typically always show my flag. I did take it down during the winter months, but I will likely be putting it up here for Saturday and probably keep it up longer.
Okay. What do you think of this idea, taking up arms? I mean, it's out there in social media, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, it may not be popular to say, but I've also thought it. Even before this happened, I always said if my country was ever under attack, threat of war or invasion or anything like that, that I said, give me my gun, and yes, I will defend my country. It's unfortunate that it is the U.S., but if we were invaded, now I'm not talking about the trade war or things like that, because that's just
right. Like if the tanks are, you know, rolling down Yonge Street kind of thing is what I'm talking about.
Exactly. If that were to happen, give me my gun, and if not, I mean, I've already been researching because I took my hunter safety when I was 14 years old. I know I need that to get my FAC. I've already making sure that I can go down the path that if I do need to get my own weapon, and I'm not talking about using it aggressively. I'm talking about defending myself and my family and my country, and I will do that. And so that's really it. And then we talk about, you know, I've heard some of the people calling in saying that many, you know, this is crazy and Americans won't do that. But if you take a look at history, there is currently a plan. It's been drafted since the 30s, and it's still on the books. I refer to the U.S. as blue, the UK or Europe or England, I should say, as red, and Canada as crimson. And there are specific plans for the invasion of Canada, starting off with Halifax because of the harbor and the deep harbor, moving westward. Secondary targets were St. John and Moncton. And if that were to fail, they would obliterate it, making sure that England wouldn't be able to use them as ports. That's a pretty good strategy. And then their next take on would be Montreal, and then further moving west. So to say that it's unfeasible, I think, is putting your head in the sand. You know, is he going to be able to do this in 4 years? Maybe not. But then if you put subsequent presidents in place who might be able to do this over time, where he's just really the stepping stone to a potential invasion. And, you know, there are other things that could happen, right? Like he could potentially petition King Charles for the head of state. Let's say, okay, King Charles, you don't want tariffs or sanctions on England or the UK or the EU, whatever. How about this? You give me head of state of Canada and you're fine. He could play this very well. I mean, somebody said the art of the deal. He is very serious at what he's doing. He is not willing to make a deal or come to the table, unfortunately. And I think we are in that type of world these days. So yeah, give me my gun. If I do need it, I will defend my country and my family. Absolutely.
All right. Interesting. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Peter's in Halifax. Hello, Peter. You're on the air, Peter.
Well, I've lost. COVID was the nail in the coffin for Canada, for me, frankly.
Why is that?
The viciousness of which we turned on each other, the unwillingness to discuss, and the complete stripping away of our rights.
Okay.
You know, this notwithstanding clause. Frankly, I'd rather live under the American Constitution than the British monarchy. And as far as arming ourselves, I don't think the Americans will need any help rounding up all of the criminals who have completely looted this once and could be great country.
Okay.
So thank you very much for what you do, Rob. You have a good day.
So it doesn't sound like you
not anymore.
Not anymore. You're pretty down on Canada.
You're
pretty down on Canada.
Because I read a lot of history. Right?
Okay. All right.
I read a lot of history. There's an incredible amount of information out there that doesn't originate in Canada. and there's different perspectives.
Okay.
And Canada, once again, our politicians swear allegiance to a king who takes it upon himself to go to his coronation in a golden gilded carriage pulled by 6 horses, surrounded by tens of millions of dollars worth of clothing. Just look at what the ostentatious display.
I know.
And then
I know you're not a big. I know you're not a. You've expressed this before, Peter. You're not a big kind of monarchist. Okay. All right, Peter. Thank you. Thank you. I want to fit one more call in before the news. Let's go to Paul. Is in Cambridge. Thanks for calling, Paul. You're on the air. Thank you for calling today.
Okay. First off, I've always been a proud Canadian. I will always be a proud Canadian, but I am disgusted with our government. How far would I go? Let's just say I can make it to Washington and I got a book of matches in my pocket.
Okay. Maybe we don't need to expand on that, but what do you make
we walked in there and burned down the White House once.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And I don't think we're to the point of advocating for that again. What I want to get at is, are you going to avoid buying American brands or traveling to the United States? Do you have a flag that you're going to fly? Stuff like this.
I avoid. I haven't traveled to the U.S. since I retired. I used to spend a lot of time down there. If I can avoid buying American products in favor of a Canadian product, I will. I'd rather not buy a Chinese product.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now,
And
knowing you,
shooter,
yes. You have a lot of guns already, right?
Guns and ammo. I'm a sports shooter. I shoot trap. I hunt. I fish. I do all that stuff.
Right. Do you have a flag?
I have a flag. Unfortunately, in the wintertime, I take the flag down. I may have to dig it out and fly it on Saturday.
All right, you do that, Paul. Thank you. Pembroke, Ontario. Greg. Hello, Greg.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Hi, Greg.
My Skidoo is running well.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
And I'm
that's good.
Proud Canadian.
Okay.
And you know what kind of peeves me off is that the media lets Kevin O'Leary come on the news and talk about taking over the American dollar, blah, blah, blah.
Economic union. Yeah, he wants an economic union, he says.
But us using the American dollar. I wish they would not even let this guy talk. He's just another little mini Trump. Okay? The only thing is Trump's got hair and O'Leary's got no hair. That's the only difference between the two of them. That's just my opinion. I will try not to buy anything American.
Okay.
I'll buy it from China for now.
Really?
Matter of fact, I buy lots of stuff from China. Not that I'm crazy about the Chinese. Trust me. And a lot of their merchandise is really improving. Anyways, stop all travel to the USA. Canadians, we should just boycott Florida. I know a lot of people own properties down there. Tough luck.
Yes. Okay.
The average Canadian should not go down there. We shouldn't spend our money there. And just boycott America totally. And maybe the next shooter will be on target.
No. Don't be saying that, Greg. I'm going to have to end our conversation.
I know.
No, I'm going to end our conversation there, Greg. Thank you. Yeah. No, can't. You can't. Just can't. Okay, let's move along. Robert, I believe, is up next. Cambridge, Ontario. Hello, Robert.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Robert.
Been listening to you for a long time now, but it's my first time calling in.
Great
thought
stuff.
I'd give it a go.
Thank you. Yeah, glad you did.
I wanted to comment on the trying to buy local. I have a very small business where I manufacture things from various metals. I can't find a source for example, titanium in Canada, so I have to buy it in the U.S. And a certain kind of brass I have to buy in the U.S. I wish I could find a Canadian source. I'm just like a guy working in my garage, so I can't like get a big, contract deal with like a big company or something. I just can't find a place to buy it. So I buy what I can in Canada, but everything else, I pretty much got to buy it in the U.S. or I take a gamble and try the. China does produce sheet titanium, but I don't know the quality. I might have to take a gamble on that if things get worse. And I just wanted to make one comment. I heard people talking about the firearms thing. I wasn't sure how serious that question was or not, but I grew up in a rural area where pretty much everybody had shotguns and whatever. And
Sure.
I live in a city now, but I still have that because I go to remote areas still where there's wildlife that can be a threat. So mostly for defense against that. But if people are seriously thinking about that, I would definitely recommend take a training course. Go get your.
Oh, you have to, I believe. Right? You have to, right? Yeah.
Yep, you have to. And if they were thinking of getting something seriously, you have to plan ahead. Like it takes a long time to get the PAL authorized and get your actual card to be able to purchase.
It's just the very idea that people are even talking about this stuff. Isn't that kind of weird that we're even talking about that?
It's always been in the back of my mind. But mostly like before it was more like, well, Russia's starting to take over the world. Are they going to come to Canada next? I guess I'll be hiding in the woods with my, firearms trying to defend myself. But it's a very unlikely scenario. It's not zero, but it's very unlikely. I'm not very worried about the U.S.
Okay.
But and also if people are planning to try to get any firearms and all, keep in mind that ammunition is a very difficult thing to get now. There's only certain kinds you can get. It's harder to get. It's more expensive. During COVID, it was very hard to get anything. So it's another thing. You have to plan way ahead to do these things. You can't just impulse go buy.
I just find it interesting that it's kind of, I just find it kind of interesting that this has even emerged as kind of an angle to this whole thing.
Well, a lot of people that would be called preppers would be, given a negative spin by having anything. But if you grew up in the middle of nowhere, you're just prepared for any situation, right?
I suppose.
You've got food, you've got ammunition, you've got, you might have to hunt or fish for food. You never know. So it's just about being prepared. But people that live in cities aren't used to thinking that way. So.
Okay. All right, Robert. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your call. Yeah, don't be a stranger. And thank you for being a first-time caller today of all days. Kyle's in Listowel, Ontario. Hi, Kyle.
I have no problem defending my country where I came from. I'm not a traitor. I'm not one to want to become the 51st state because people fought for our country, World War I, World War II. The people that sacrificed their life for us when they were 12, 13, 14, lied to us to fight for our freedoms that we have today. Arm me up, Rob. I have no problem defending where I was.
Really?
My family, they back in Europe, all three of my great uncles got shot and killed when the Germans tried to take over where my family was from in Europe. They're buried there still to this day where they got killed. So I have no problem doing that. If people don't think that this is a big thing, it's the same thing what happened with Germany. 2 weeks it took them to take over France. It took them not that long to take over Poland. A big economic power like Germany at the time took over these small countries. No different than what United States is trying to happen to Canada. And those people that are saying they want to be traitors and they want to go and become the 51st state, you might as well not buy a poppy at that point either because you're not proud to be Canadian. You're not proud to what those people sacrificed their life for. So absolutely, arm me up. I have a pilot license. You want to put me in an airplane? Go ahead. I've got trucks. You want to start doing trade between the provinces to help defend our country? Go ahead. I'm ready for it, Rob.
All right. Okay. Kyle, thank you. Passionate as always, Kyle. On the road today. Donna is out in Calgary. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Hi, Donna.
Hi. I'm 68 years old. I was born in Canada, and I'm proud to be Canadian. And I think, I would hate to have a war here because of my kids and families. And, everybody thinks, well, Canadians are passive and they're polite and all this. But I think if push came to shove, I think probably, we should do everything we can to prevent it getting to a war, like boycott buying American. But I think it has to start with the leadership getting the people on board with that, because just hearing it on your program, and a lot of people don't even have television anymore watching the news. they're, they have their laptop or whatever watching Prime or Netflix. I listen to your show whenever I'm out driving.
Thank you.
I just think, it has to be like an alert on your cell phone that we're boycotting, the U.S. so it reaches everybody. Because, some will do it, some won't. The U.S. won't even feel the impact. But I think if all Canadians got on board, I think they would feel it. And that would be a start. And from there, I mean, like I said, if push comes to shove, I really believe Canada will fight back. I think, we're passive, but if our country is threatened, I don't think there is anyone really, unless they are from the U.S., want to go back there. But anyways, that's about all I was going to say.
Well, I'm glad you said it, Donna. Thank you for taking the time to say that today. Great to hear from you. I mean, that was a minority opinion the last time we talked about this idea of, avoiding American goods or traveling to the United States. The majority opinion was it wouldn't matter. That was the common opinion expressed a few weeks ago when we did a similar show. As for traveling to the United States, a lot of callers to our show said then they wouldn't be traveling to the United States anytime soon, but it didn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. It had everything to do with the weakness in the Canadian dollar. And what we were hearing was, well, the loonies at 69 cents US, that doesn't even make it worth traveling to the United States. It was more of a currency thing than a Donald Trump thing. So again, we're just investigating and wondering whether there's been any kind of evolution on that opinion given recent events. John in Okotoks. John, you're on the air, John. Hi there. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having my call.
Yeah,
so
you're welcome.
Interesting
Go ahead.
Introduction, because all of this rhetoric that we've been hearing from Trump, from the U.S., has really got me to think differently about Canada. I'm a proud Canadian, lived here my whole life, and always supported Canada. But I've never been one to read labels, ever. I go to a grocery store, I just buy kind of what looks attractive to me, what is priced right, and I walk out. And I've never done that. But, the rhetoric of the last couple of weeks has got me starting to look at labels.
Okay.
And got us, purchasing produce from Canada, and we're, avoiding the U.S. produce. So that's one example. The second thing, I like the golf. I've always wanted to go on a golf trip, and, many people know that the U.S. is a very popular destination. They've got the good climate for golfing, and then they've got lots of golf courses. Yeah. And this is the first time in my life that I've been able to afford something like that. I had the opportunity to go to a U.S. destination, but consciously, in light of all of the transition and the rhetoric, I've made a decision. I'm going to Vancouver Island this year, and I'm excited about it. Super thrilled.
Oh, good.
Cool. But I hope that brings, gets other people to start thinking differently about some of the stuff. And it's interesting, my last point that I wanted to bring up, and again, that I hope resonates with other people listening, is you mentioned the U.S. dollar, the Canadian dollar with respect to the U.S. and the exchange rate, and how that's causing some people to think differently about their U.S. travel.
Yes.
That is not why, my wife and I have decided to make a different choice here. She's a runner, and she had an option to go to New York in the fall or Berlin. And when we looked at everything, it absolutely makes no sense for us to go to the U.S. and support the American economy right now in light of everything that's happening, everything that we're hearing in the press. And that's actually driven us and pointed us in the direction of booking a trip to Berlin for her to go run the marathon, and, something we're looking forward to it. But I had three examples how the Trump decisions and the rhetoric in the press and everything we hear today has really influenced and impacted our personal decisions as a family. And I hope that resonates with some of your listeners.
All right, John. I really appreciate your call today, John. Very thoughtful. I hope you'll call again sometime. this idea, I'm not going to buy American-made goods. I'm not going to travel to the United States. A lot is being made of Saturday being Flag Day, 60th anniversary of the Maple Leaf flag. You're going to fly a flag on Saturday. And even some people suggesting take up arms, Canada, defend Canada, buy a firearm. Stephen Harper with some provocative comments yesterday at a book launch of his in Ottawa that we can tell you about after the news. I mean, it persists as an issue because the threat has not gone away. I mean, there was this slight sense of relief, I guess, when the 30-day delay was announced on the tariffs, and somehow the Canadian government, the Trudeau Liberals, had managed to convince Trump that they had some kind of plan to deal with his concerns about the border, even though what was announced was largely announced weeks ago by the Trudeau government, with the exception of naming a fentanyl czar. And the Trudeau government appointed someone to that job yesterday, former high-ranking member of the RCMP, former intelligence advisor to the prime minister. And yet the threats just keep on coming. I mean, you think about everything that Trump has said. Fox News aired some longer remarks from their Super Bowl day interview, aired those yesterday on Fox News. And Trump again went on about how great life would be for Canadians if only they would become the 51st state, lower taxes, better healthcare, he claims. And of course, the protection of the most powerful military in the world. Roll the tape there, David.
And I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada, you can't count them. Wayne Gretzky, I love Wayne Gretzky. I love so many people. I love their tradition. I love their ice hockey. But why are we paying $200 billion a year, essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it. The Canadian citizens would have a much lower tax rate. They'd have much better medical, and they'd have military protection like nobody can have. You know, you have Russian ships all over the place. You have Chinese ships all over the place. They're sailing all over Canada. They're sailing right next to Greenland. We're not going to let that happen to Greenland. They're sailing all over, and we're going to stop that. But if you're a Canadian and you pay much lower taxes, you have much better military protection, you know, Canada is in default in NATO.
And then he started talking about the auto industry, and this is kind of new. I mean, he's said in the past that he wants cars built in Detroit, but yesterday Fox News aired this audio of him saying, we stole the auto industry from the United States. Go ahead, David.
In Mexico, they're building car plants all over the place to make cars, sell them into the United States. I say, no way, you're not going to do that. We're going to put big tariffs on those cars. I don't want those cars. We can make those cars right here. You know, if you look at Canada, Canada has a very big car industry. They stole it from us. They stole it because our people were asleep at the wheel. So what happens is Canada is going to have our cars. We're going to take the car industry. If we don't make a deal with Canada, we're going to put a big tariff on cars. Could be a 50 or 100% because we don't want their cars. We want to make the cars in Detroit.
You can jump in on the conversation here, and we'd love to hear from you today. Lee has given us a call in Cambridge, Ontario. Thank you for doing that, Lee. Hi there, Lee.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Lee. Thank you.
All right. I want to talk about this Buy Canadian and all this
sure thing
that people are talking about.
Yes.
I live in Cambridge, Ontario. And at one point, we had 7 shoe factories here in this town. And we also had about 8 textile factories.
Wow.
And guess what? They're all gone.
Sure.
They're all gone.
Yeah.
And everything else that I look around town, it's all American-owned. Factories that are American-owned. Are we going to boycott them too? Is that what we're going to do?
And what are those factories making, Lee? What are they making there?
They're making car parts. They're making nuclear parts. They're making all kinds of stuff. And so are we going to boycott them? And also, I go down to the local market here in town every Saturday, and I look around, and most of the products that they have there are American.
Really? Really?
And import from Americans. I go to my local supermarket, too, and I look around. These are all products from USA, from Mexico. And so where are we going to buy our stuff? Everything has been shipped in.
Right.
Canadians don't want to do anything. They just don't want to do anything, and they all go around and say, "Oh, we're going to boycott this. We're going to boycott that." You know, and then, well, yeah, you boycott the plants that you were working for, and see where you're going to end up. You know, that's ludicrous.
Right.
Forget what Trump is doing.
Well, it's hard to forget. It's all over the news.
To do some work. Get them to do some work. We're just letting them free. They're traveling everywhere. They're going to Paris. They're going here. They're going there, and they're not looking after our products. They're not looking after our, our factories or our, companies.
Right. So you think that our governments should be making a more resilient Canada, is what you would say, right?
Absolutely. I mean, forget about Trump. Forget what he's doing.
Forget about Trump. Okay.
I mean, what he's doing, he's looking after his own people. But our politicians here, what are they doing now? They're shutting down Parliament. There's nobody in Parliament. They're not discussing anything. It's all fraud. People are just don't know what they're doing, what they're saying, because if you really look around, most of the factories here are all U.S. owned.
Okay. All right, Lee. All right. We are getting word from one of our correspondents who covers the Ontario legislature that all the premiers are, they've been down there for a couple of days, every one of them, and they're apparently off to a meeting now at the White House. Whether they're going to meet with Trump, it doesn't say. It says they're going to meet with senior advisors to the U.S. president. So, fingers crossed, maybe there'd be a positive development out of that. Lee, thank you for your call. Let's go to Steve, is in Calgary today. Hello, Steve. You're on the air. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Steve. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, first I'm calling, and
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I don't know, I guess my view of being a Canadian has changed over the years, and I am born here, raised here, and I am, to some degree, yes, I am proud to be Canadian, but this whole thing is a different entity. I just see it as all theatrics. Like, it's political theatrics, and at the end of the day, it's politicians trying to jostle to get the minds of, in my opinion, weak-minded Canadians to buy into this and say, yeah, rah, let's support Canadian, but our own government has been at war with the Canadians in the last 9 years here. I mean, they're banning guns that have no rhyme or reason. They're shutting down peaceful protests, and yet Canadians don't say anything about that, and yet Trump comes in and suddenly they're patriotic. It's all just theatrics. And it's sad because, like, I see our own country disintegrating, our own values. Like some other callers came in and said about the immigration, and you have, post-secondary institutions, just making bank on this at the expense of housing prices skyrocketing, being taxed absolutely to death, and Canadians don't care. They're just like, oh, whatever the media tells me to get upset about, I guess that's what I'm gonna get upset about.
So all of this stuff, wrap yourself in the flag, all of this kind of stuff is maybe kind of a smoke screen for some of the problems that the political class has created in this country.
That's right. And I think the media has always played a part in that. And I just don't see it as value, because at the end of the day, the problems we're facing are internal. And we've been facing those problems for the last 8-9 years. And Canadians are just fine with that. But, big bad Trump.
Okay, sir. Thank you for your call, Steve. Thanks for being a first-time caller. Appreciate it. Really do today. Thank you. But, David, just on the avoiding American brands, I mean, is that something you're doing in your household?
Not really.
It's
just impractical.
Conscious decision to try and avoid buying stuff that says made in the USA?
Look, me personally, I mean, it's impractical for me. As a consumer, my leeway to avoid certain products is limited because I don't have a whole lot of disposable income. You know, when I talk to my parents who are like just pre-retirement age, earning good money, they're fine with it. They're happy to put in the time and effort and pay a little more because it's important to them. They're in a different situation. But me personally, I live downtown. I don't have a whole lot of options in terms of where I can shop.
Yeah.
So it's not.
See, that's one of the things I was wondering, David. I mean, Canadians going shopping, especially in this economic environment, there's a lot of anxiety out there about the economy, right? And so many Canadians are just trying to make it to the next paycheck. How many Canadians have the luxury of looking at labels these days?
Yeah.
Right. When they go into whatever store they go in, are they looking at labels or are they looking at price tags? Come on, be honest. When it comes time to actually take something off the shelf, put it in a shopping cart, what is the primary motivation for that purchase? Is it really, think about it, well, where was this product made? What company made this product? Or is it, how much is this particular product? Okay, this one is $1.49. This one is 99 cents. I think I'll take the one that's 99 cents. Because I just have a feeling that for a lot of people, if not most people in Canada these days, if not every day, it's price. Above all other considerations, especially when it comes to, the basics. So I just wonder, the boycott America. Like, is it practical for a lot of people, given the current economic environment? Canceling travel plans to the United States, a totally different thing, right, Dave?
Yeah, certainly.
Travel. We've had this discussion in our house about traveling to the United States. It's not even a new thing. People saying in Canada, well, as long as Donald Trump is the president, I'm just not going to spend my money in the United States. And we've heard this for weeks now from various premiers. We heard it from the prime minister when he did that Saturday night address. Maybe some people are rethinking their travel plans, not because Donald Trump is the president, but rather because of the exchange rate. The last time we talked about this, again, I bring this up, a 69-cent dollar just doesn't go very far in the United States. And a lot of people are avoiding travel to the United States, not because of a big mean orange man in the White House, but 69-cent dollar. But spending on travel that's a different category than, spending money on groceries. Spending money on travel is a totally discretionary thing. People can always do staycations if they want to save money. There are options when it comes to travel, all kinds of options. There are all kinds of other warm places to go anyway. You can always go to Cuba, spend your money in a communist dictatorship if you want. Anyway, it's just an idea that I had out there. Joe in Kitchener, thanks for calling. Joe, you're on the line. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Joe.
You ask your listeners to a person, what does it mean to be Canadian? If you can get a straight answer out of like 10 in a row, even, you know what, I'll take 5 in a row.
Okay.
What does it mean to be Canadian? I don't think anybody can give you a straight answer.
Are you saying we have no core identity?
Well, what does that mean? What does it mean? If it means that I'm surrounded by stupid, fickle people that are going to vote for the Liberals again because they got this shiny new toy and they've forgotten the last decade of what the hell the Liberals have done to us to put us in this position in the first place, I don't want to be a Canadian if I'm surrounded by stupid people like that.
Okay. Okay.
So you've got your Mark Carney now. You're willing to give him a free pass and just forget the last 10 years? It's the Liberal Party. Okay, people? It's not Trudeau. Trudeau may be gone, but he's not dead. His policies are alive and well. I don't want to be a Canadian if it means another Liberal government. Sorry, Kyle. I appreciate your loyalty to your brand and your country, if you even know what the hell that means. Not if it comes at the cost of having another Liberal government to screw us over again. Sorry, I'm not.
Right,
I don't care if what it means to be Canadian. If I have to suffer through all this stupidity and vote in another Liberal government, no.
Okay. Popular opinion today, Joe. Popular opinion. Thank you for your call. Good to hear from you. Have to run though. Have to stop there. Kelly is in Calgary. Hi, Kelly. You're on the air. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi. How are you today?
I'm good, Kelly. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for taking my call.
You're
I'll
welcome.
admit I haven't been, I've only just turned into the radio in the last 10 minutes or so and hearing the last couple of talkers and points you had on. But I think that this is a relatively important topic that's clearly at the forefront of a lot of people's minds right now.
Sure
and I
is.
think that a couple of points I wanted to make was that, first and foremost, when we're talking about purchases at the store and so forth, that I think you make a good point that, yes, Canadians care a lot about price, and especially the way that the economy and the whatnot in the world is turning. But I think that it's not difficult to also try and look at the labels and find products that are not American, and if ideally Canadian or other countries that we have good partnerships with, and that I was even in the grocery store the other day, and then sometimes there's products that are Canadian that are outpricing American or foreign products, and it's worth investigating those. And in the spirit of operating in a capitalist world, we're voting with our dollar. We're voting for keeping our money within our own country, and I think that's where even your pennies can count. And then furthermore, you had a speaker on who was really quite upset about the way that the political world has been the last 8 years, and that I think that for me, I feel like when they made their point about what is Canadian pride, what is our identity, and you could get 10 different answers from 10 different people, I think that's actually very Canadian. A huge part of our strength is we're diverse. We have diverse cultures, diverse experiences, diverse backgrounds, and I think that's a huge, huge part of what I consider Canadian identity and pride. I'm Calgarian. It's a very conservative city and province. I'm white, and, I'm born and raised Albertan. And yet I've always considered the diversity of the people coming to the table and the things that we have here in our country to be our strength. And that's what I consider Canadian pride.
All right. Okay. So just, to kind of circle back to our original questions, I mean, are you avoiding American brands? Are you traveling to the United States? Saturday's Flag Day. Everybody's saying, fly the flag on Saturday. Are you doing all of these things? What are you doing?
I wouldn't say that I'm doing anything specific from a outlandish, say, flag flying or anything particular like that. But I am being more conscious of where my dollar's going. I am, avoiding flying into the States for a variety of reasons, and not just the way that our dollar is or the way that the political atmosphere is there. But I actively am seeking to spend my dollar on Canadian products and Canadian, or at least pro-Canadian sources. And so I'm putting an additional effort in that. And I actually think that that's something we should be doing anyways, considering the economy, considering how tough times are, that there's value in keeping the dollar here at home as much as possible.
Okay, Kelly. Thank you for your call today.
Thank you very much for taking my call.
Really good to hear from you. Well, there you go, David. We made it through. It was kind of an experimental couple of hours, but in the end, thank you so much. Heard from a lot of new voices today, as a matter of fact, and it was great to hear from a lot of people who called us for the very first time and shared their opinions. So we will return tomorrow with our old 1-833 telephone number. We'll have a brand new topic and more opinions, as we always do, and always, of course, the latest breaking news. That's coming up next. David and I are going home and gassing up the snow removal machines, because we got
come on.
Oh, I got a big one. 40 centimeters on the way over the next 24 hours or so in this part of the country. So
I might just move.
Keep us in your thoughts, will you? Keep us in your thoughts. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.